All right, Anita, let's bring in Alex Gray for more on this. You actually wrote an op-ed about this not too long ago saying that it makes perfect sense. Now, they say Greenland's not for sale, but sometimes things aren't for sale until they are for sale. And when you look at Trump, I mean, this is a guy who bought Mar-a-Lago for $7 million. He knows how to cut a deal.
I mean, look, President Trump is he's in the best traditions of Abraham Lincoln, who was talking about purchasing Greenland in the 1860s, the best tradition of Ronald Reagan, who warned 50 years ago that giving up the Panama Canal was foolishness, was dangerous to our national security. President Trump is 100% right. Greenland has strategic value to the United States, both minerals and strategic for our national security and our defense. And giving up the Panama Canal in the 1970s was one of the most foolhardy strategic decisions in the history of this country. President Reagan was right that it was a mistake. President Trump is right that it was a mistake. And President Trump's probably the first leader since Ronald Reagan who has the courage to do something about it, and I hope he does.
How do you convince Denmark, which has ownership over Greenland, to sell? Apparently, according to some reports back in 2019, Trump was offering to trade Puerto Rico for it. Give the Danes a little nice tropical island. But I don't think anybody would actually go for that.
Well, there are a lot of things you can do to create an environment where we can take over the defense of Greenland. We can take over a significant part of the national security obligations that Denmark currently has for Greenland. The Greenlanders have said publicly they're going to get independence at some point. So the question is, when they get independence, are the Chinese and the Russians going to be there to greet them and to do things that certainly are not in the sovereign interests of the Greenlandic people? Or is it going to be the United States who's there to make sure that both our security and the sovereignty of the Greenlanders themselves are protected? And I would much rather have Donald Trump waiting for the Greenlanders when they get independence than Xi Jinping.
I mean, it really is a gorgeous place, albeit cold. I also wanted to ask you about Trump and the Panama Canal, because he seems to be in a little bit of an online feud with the president, Jose Raul Molino. Jose Raul Molino said of Trump saying that he would take back ownership of the canal, said, quote, "As president, I want to express precisely that every square meter of the Panama Canal and its adjacent area belong to Panama and will continue to be. The sovereignty and independence of our country are non-negotiable," to which, as Jackie pointed out, Trump posted a picture of the bow of a ship transiting the canal with an American flag on it saying, "Welcome to the United States Canal." I mean, obviously, this is just leverage to try to lower fees. Is there any way Trump could take it back?
Well, I think we should have a serious discussion about the failure of the United States under the Carter administration to give up one of our most significant strategic points in the world. It was one of the greatest American engineering and strategic achievements of the 20th century. Let's have a conversation about what has happened in the last 10, 15 years, where China is now dominating the Panama Canal and threatening our interests in the Western Hemisphere. I think President Trump is in a great position to talk seriously about what it would look like for the United States to enter into some sort of negotiation with Panama to have a future stake, a more comprehensive American stake in something we built with American blood, sweat, and tears under Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, and then there's the trolling of Justin Trudeau, which this president continues to do mercilessly. Here's what he said on Wednesday on Truth Social. "No one can answer why we subsidize Canada to the tune of over $100 million a year. Makes no sense. Many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state. They would save massively on taxes and military protection. I think it's a great idea. 51st state." Now, I say this as a person who was born in Canada and emigrated to the United States back in 1989, became a U.S. citizen a week after 9/11. For Canadians, it would save them 30% going to Disney World if they were using American dollars instead of Canadian dollars.
Well, in addition to that, John, it'd be nice if the Canadians would spend more than 1.3% of their GDP on defense and actually start contributing to protecting North America. So, in addition to Disney World, it'd be great if we could get some help from them defending our shared border and defending the Arctic.
Well, I don't think Trudeau's going to be there much longer. I think that Trump's going to be dealing with a fellow named Pierre Poilievre, who he may find more on his side in terms of a lot of these thorny issues between the two nations. Alex, great to see you. Wish you a Merry Christmas.
Thanks, John. Same to you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.